Video, I want to talk about three functions that you're going to have to familiarize yourself with. It's basically the one called intersect, another one called project, and the other one, the last one, is pull. So these three functions are found in underneath this icon here, which is the first icon is project curves. If I expand this toolbar and I bring it in, you've got the two first icons that I would like you to start familiarizing yourself with, which is the project curve and the pull curve. And I will show the differences between these two. And another one, it's the intersect, or called object intersection, which is found here. So I'm going to start with the object intersection just for starters. And let's say I go in my primitive and I just want to draw a sphere. I can type in 0, for example, and I'm going to pull about this big, like this. So I just left click. So I can see it here in perspective mode and switch to shaded mode as such. Okay. And now I'm going to create a plane. So I'm going to go here, and this is an icon. This icon here, if I expand it, I've got a whole set of different ways of creating my surfaces. Let's start with the most simple one. I can create a surface just by drawing a simple rectangle. So I left click here, and I'm just going to draw a surface that is planar, and you can see the result here in perspective. Just for information, I mentioned in one of the videos you can click on the sprocket here. And in Sprocket, you have to display checked, so the display tab will show up here. Okay, you've got the display tab, and in here I can choose to see, for example, I can see the ISO curves if I want to, or you can also go in the properties window, and if you select your object under the first icon object here, you can also click here show surface ISO curves. Okay. So that's to help you visualize a bit better. Okay, so I've got this plane and that sphere that are cutting one another. So obviously if I select object intersection and it says select objects to intersect, so I select these two and I press enter, obviously it's going to give me a curve. Okay, the intersection of these two surfaces gives me as a result a curve. So if I go in the top view and I start drawing a 2D curve this time, and I go about something like that, and then I want to draw a line and it's just going to cut across. If I select these two objects, and instead of clicking on this object intersection here, I can also type the function intersect, and I press enter. So obviously the intersection between two curves, the resultant will be a point. Okay, so you can intersect between curves, you can intersect between surfaces, and of course I can also, for example, draw a line that goes across like this and do an intersect between my sphere and my curve and do object intersection. And the intersection between my curve and my surface, the resultant will be a point here and a point there. Okay, so the intersect tool will be very helpful, and I will make a surfacing exercise in this week's lesson on how I use the intersect tool to locate my points on my surfaces and my curves. And it's a very important tool to familiarize. So remember, it's this icon here. I just pulled this toolbar, I just pulled the toolbar from this icon called project curves. So it's called curve from object, and it's this little icon here. Or you can type intersect, and you'll see me in many exercises I just type intersect, and it does the same thing, right? Okay. The next one I want to talk about, it's the function project. So you've got here project curves. It's the very first icon, or again it's this one also. Okay, it's the same thing. So let me do a little demonstration. I'm just going to select all my curves, so I can go into my selection filter here, select all the curves, and I press delete, and select all the points. It selects all the points automatically, and I press delete again, and I can close this toolbar now. Okay, so I'm gonna go and change viewports, and I'm gonna draw a line along its midpoint. So I just go here, I press in 0, and I'll do something like that, and I'm just gonna trim this. So I select my curve, and then I select my surface just to trim it. And I'm going to type in a text So let's write here. I'm just clicking in this text object, and I'm gonna go and change this to Arial, if I can find it. Adobe Arial, there we go. I'm just going to keep it as a set of curves. I'm going to keep the height at 2 inches. We'll see how it looks like. And I'm just going to write in here in the text to create box, I'm going to write Rhino 3D, like that. So it's a bit small, but that's okay. I can always left click to position it, and then I select my object. And I'm just going to right click here on Scale 2D, and I'm just going to press Shift and left click just to make it a bit bigger. So I'm just doing a 2D scale like this. Alright, so it's in the X and Y plane that I'm doing the 2D scale. And now I'm going to move this and go above here. Maybe make it a bit smaller, so I just right click again on the icon and I just press Shift to keep to constrain on the X axis as such, and I just left click to resize it. Okay, so now I've got the text obviously is hidden underneath my sphere, as you can see. So if I go back in my 3D view, I'm going to do a projection. So let me take first, I just want to take this and I'm just going to put it up like that so that we can see a bit better. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to select my text and now I'm going to project it. So I select my curves and then it's asking me to select the surfaces. So I select my surface and I make sure I'm in the proper view to do the projection. So I know that I need to make a projection on the Z-axis, so I have to select my top viewport and I right click to do the projection and we can see the result here. So that's the projection. Basically what it does, okay, if I undo this, it's as if I selected these curves and I did surface, extrude, curve, straight. So I just do a straight extrusion and it's as if I was pulling all the way across my half sphere and it did an intersection between these surfaces and I would get the resultant. Okay, so it's basically what it did. It's like a straight extrusion. That's why you need to be in the proper viewport. So if I want to do a projection along the Z-axis, which is the case in this example, I need to make sure that I'm in position in the top viewport to do that. If I need to project on the Y-axis, so against this part of my surface, I need to position myself, for example, in the front viewport, okay? So if I type in another text here, let's put it maybe at 4 inches, like this. So you can see I'm in the front viewport now. Now I want to project along the Y-axis, so I just select my text, project, select my surface, right-click for enter, and now I'm doing a projection like this. So make sure that you're in the proper viewport to do your projection correctly, okay? Now, when I project it on the top viewport, so I project curve, I select first my curves, I press enter, and then I select my surface, and I press enter again or right click. Here's the result. You can see that there's a bit of stretching going on with my functions. If I select my sphere, and I go here, and I just left click on this icon called Analyze Direction, what you see in white are what we call the normals. By default, this is how it should be represented. Your surface normals should point towards the outside, okay? Because if I was to left click like this, and I invert my normals, there are some functions that would give me a different result in the way the tools used would operate on my surfaces. So make sure it's a good habit to check sometimes that when you execute certain operation that your normals are pointing outside. That is the convention, okay? So let me undo. And now I'm going to show you what happens with the pull tool, okay? Well, what I'm going to do actually, I'm just going to make a copy so that I can show you side by side. So I'm just going to click on copy and go over here, right click, there you go. So I'm going to select the first set of curves again. I just click on project curve, I select my surface, I right click, and there's the projection. So if I click on the direction, you see my normals, how they're pointing. And I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to select my text here, and I'm going to this time choose the function called pull curve. So it's the second icon right next to it. I just left click, and then it's asking me to select the surface. So I select my surface and I right click. And you can see clearly a difference between the projection and the pull curve. And pull curve is also very important. It's a tool that I would use quite often. You see less deformation when it's projecting this curve into that surface versus this one. Like I told you before, in the first case with project curve, what it did, it just projected like as if it was that sort of extrusion, and it found a sort of a, well, it found the intersection between my extrusion and my surface here, and it gave you this resultant. So that's why you see stretching going on. Here, if I click again on the analyze direction, it's the same as this one. Sorry. It's the same as this one. You see the normals pointing outwards. What it did, it's like it's as if it vacuum formed the text, so it minimized the deformation of the text. Of course, it's a bit smaller, so you'd have to write the text a bit bigger and still use the tool, the pull tool, and you would be able to minimize the deformation as opposed to the project tool. So for certain situations, you want to use the project curve, okay, and other situation you might want to use the pull curve. But I want you to just understand the fundamentals, the differences between these two functions, what they do exactly. So one is the projection straight, and the other one is pull, and it follows basically the normals on your sphere. Like imagine as if, the best example is imagine as if it was vacuum formed, and it would follow the shape based on the normals direction at each different point of that surface, okay? And I'll make a lot of demonstrations, a lot of little exercises when I use the project curve function and the pull function, and it's going to become clearer for you as I go along. Okay, so this is for project and the pull function. Okay, so I hope it was clear enough, and thank you for